All right.
He's muted.
He's muted, and he has.
Oh my God, we're off and running. What's going on, everyone?
Sorry, we're getting Dan in order.
It is another lovely Sunday morning. I am your host, Ainsley Bowden, who is now unmuted and ready to talk about games. Joined, as always, on my left or right, depending on how you look at this, is Mr. Dan Rodriguez with the Craig shirt today. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good, man. I'm ready to talk some Horizon. Apparently, I thought I had a lot of time into it. You guys,
I'm ready to listen. I want to hear you guys talk about because I haven't been able to.
These two guys, they got a lot more than I do.
Yeah,
and I don't do anything.
If I get a family appropriate game, we're gonna kick the crap out of it in terms of hours. So we had a lot of fun the last 2 days.
Nice.
We'll get to him. By the way, everyone, Dan is now formally known as the Puerto Rican. So that
Puerto
is
Rican.
When you refer to him going forward, he is the Puerto Rican. He is Polish, Puerto Rican, a very
Can we change that?
rare mix. So that's what we're going with.
Damn it. What the hell?
BioShock.
Joined as always, Mr. Tie Guy Travis. What is happening, dude?
McClunky. Been having a lot of fun this week with a bunch of different games, including Horizon.
Excellent.
Yeah, and because I don't have kids, Hogue, that's always going to be my advantage over you when it comes to game time. You know.
Well, it's funny, right? We're going to talk about, I think, a couple of games today, but so Cyberpunk is the people are in bed time.
We're getting there.
And Horizon is, hey, this is okay.
Nice.
And last but certainly not least, the host of Virtual Legality, you know him, Mr. Hogue is here. What's happening?
Oh, I'm having a heck of a week. All Horizon related, actually. So yeah, and I'm looking forward to talking about it. I'm interested in seeing what everybody thinks on this, and whether Dan's still alive.
Can you hear me?
As usual, I don't know what Dan is doing.
I don't know what's happening. Like my camera just stopped working. Oh, there we go. I just hit it.
Go.
No, wait a minute. It jumped my camera.
When you do a clip show of our smoothest openings for 2022, I think this one has to be right there.
Yeah, this is top of the list.
This is good.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to be a little jumpy because I got to use my. Apparently, this camera just decided to stop working.
No, it's good. This is your OnlyFans camera?
Yeah, good. I like it. I like the grain effect. It gives it a little bit of found footage, Dan. It's great.
Whoa.
He's both not in performance nor resolution mode.
I was actually going to lead directly into
crazy. We call that a reverse Horizon Zero Dawn right there.
He's in Rodriguez mode.
Base PS4 presentation.
He's recording this on a 3DS camera. It's
right.
Yeah.
Oh, what's going on, everyone? Good to see everyone in the chat. And looking forward to a good show today. But yes, we have a lot. Well, we don't have a lot to talk about. It was actually a rather quiet week in games, believe it or not. But we did, of course, get the first giant game of the year with Horizon Forbidden West. We'll talk about that. Going to talk a little bit about PlayStation Studios development, some of the things we're seeing with Horizon and their upcoming games I want to chat with you guys about. We've got Nintendo closing down some more games, so I want to have a conversation around digital game preservation. And a couple other little things we'll touch on, including Cyberpunk and a BioShock movie, which I'm interested to hear from you guys about, because I think already Dan and Travis have possibly alternate viewpoints on that, as per typical. So we'll have some fun with that one. But before we get to all that, we, as you listen to this or as you join us, we are actually closing in on 10,000 subscribers. We're just a couple hundred away. So really, a bunch of new faces like we've seen over the past few weeks. If you enjoy us here, enjoy the content, and enjoy the kind of new things we're doing right now, we'd really love for you to sub and check us out on the regular. And if you listen to us and listening to this audibly, first of all, apologize for the intro because it was terrible today. and second of all, just hit us up, leave us a review, leave us a comment. It is super appreciated, and we always get back to everyone. So thank you for that. Now, I have an on-the-spot question for you guys today because I'm playing a game that I'm going to talk a lot about next week. So I hope you're prepared. I can't talk about Redacted this week, but what?
I wonder what it could be.
I don't know. Are there any games coming out next week?
No,
I know it's not Destiny. What other games are coming
No, what other
out?
game?
All right, I guess we'll have to wait. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out by next week. Maybe midweek. Anyway, what is your guys' favorite RPG of all time?
Didn't we ask this question before?
Well, I mean, either way, for me, it kind of depends on how you define RPG, right? We've got a lot of things that use bars and a lot of things that use experience now. My favorite, I mean, so how much do you want me to lawyer this, right? Like I have a favorite in different genres. So I have a trouble.
Just pick one.
I have a trouble looking at my head and saying Final Fantasy VI and Witcher 3 are the same type of game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so.
But you picked 2 all-time classics, so you're
well.
in good shape.
So in general, and then I have Star Control 2 out there, which is to me it's an RPG. It's a storytelling, dynamic, narrative-driven game with the expansion of power over the course of its running time. But it's not character-driven. It's not any of those kinds of things. So I would have to say, for me, it's Witcher 3.
Good man.
That's
I knew we
choice.
got the right man for the show for sure.
That's right.
Good choice.
Where you guys at?
I think I'm still in New Vegas area. You know what I mean? Like it's still one of the best ones for me as far as like a pure RPG, as far as stuff mattering,
Yeah,
you know,
dynamism,
and how you build your
definitely.
character. That's kind of a key component to RPGs for me. You know, you can, you know, the min-maxing and, you know, the possibilities in that game are really good. You know, I really enjoy where those conversations, you know, you have to have, you know, a certain part, you know, a certain skill level. You have to have and there's different endings. It's always been my favorite. There's a lot. Witcher 3 and Final Fantasy 6 are amazing games. You know, Skyrim, and you know, there's so many.
Dan, I know you're rattling off like 10 RPGs.
I'm trying to think if I'm going to go like
I say them all.
New Vegas, you got it.
Throw Chrono
You got
Trigger
it.
in there.
Vegas. I was going to say New Vegas. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm a Peggle 2. It's me.
That's
What if
good.
what if this was the show where you guys found out I don't know what an RPG is? Like I was just like
In
very
fairness, I don't think the
confused.
gaming industry, role playing. Is there a game that you're playing that you don't play your role?
Yeah, I know. It's
Yeah, I know. RPG makes no sense as a term, but it's weird. It's like one of those things where I can't tell you what it is, but I know it when I see it.
Yeah,
that legal
There's an association.
reference.
Well, you think of like Final Fantasy VI and Witcher, and like, or any Western, like a New Vegas, and they're so wildly different because that's all choice and decision and building your character versus we're going to tell you this narrative. It's going to be Final Fantasy VI, it's going to be Final Fantasy VII. You're going to enjoy it, but for the most part, you're building your characters to work through gates in order for us to tell you the story that we want to tell. They're wildly different game types. I'm sorry, this has been a bugaboo of mine.
Yeah, and I got a shock of my life when I went to go cover one of the Souls-like games. I think it was Bloodborne. I was covering it, and
we're talking
that is how I.
here.
Yeah, but dude,
Well,
this is how I found out that the term JRPG in Japan, they consider the Souls-like genre the new JRPG. And I was shocked to discover that. I was like, I had no idea that was now what was considered a JRPG in Japan. And
I got that Bitmap Books, like Bible of JRPGs, which is awesome. I mean, I'm not getting any back end for that. It's just a great book. But they have a section on the Soulsborne games, and I'm like,
yep.
Huh?
They consider them JRPGs in Japan. That to them, that's the modern JRPG now, is the Souls-like genre. I was just
not? I mean, JRPG, I think we all have kind of know it when you see it.
We know what it is. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like in Persona 5, you go, okay, that's a JRPG.
That's a JRPG.
That is a JRPG.
Dragon Quest 11, that type of thing. But
what's funny is they don't think of Persona 5 as JRPGs anymore. They think of that as like it's like a retro JRPG versus the modern one, which is like a Souls-like game. It's crazy.
I'm an over Johnny in the Cloud, even in the home of JRPGs.
But wouldn't a JRPG in Japan just be an RPG? I mean,
but here's the thing: they own that genre, and they use it too. Yeah. They use the term. Like
I tend to call our football American football now, because just to avoid the comments that I get from the soccer fanatics.
Sure.
Yeah. So they probably do the same thing.
I mean, Souls games are RPGs, and they're made in Japan, so. To Dan's point, technically it is a JRPG.
But now they own the name of the genre, which I think a lot of people have a very specific thing in mind when they think of a JRPG, and it is not Souls.
Yeah, although I mean, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
My favorite RPG, because I don't want to be cliche and say The Witcher 3. I'm going to go with Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind.
Yeah.
Oh, the weird one. Cool.
The weird one. I like the weird one.
The best one.
I like the weird one.
I have to admit, I bounced off that one pretty hard with the weirdness. I think you have to ingest it and
when did you play it?
I played it whenever it launched on whichever Xbox that was.
The original.
Oh yeah. The Xbox experience was rough.
Okay, that's where I played it. And there were mushrooms everywhere, and there were things with long legs, and I'm like, I'm out.
Stilt Striders, come on. Yeah, I also that game is that I also played it on an Xbox, and I think I ended up having to go through like 9 copies of the game over the year and deleting my account all the time, and it runs super
I still
poorly.
have my copy.
Oh my god, but it was so good. I also still have my copy. That's how I played it via backwards compatibility on Xbox. So,
You can
it's impossible to play right now. Even with mods, it's like impossible to play right now. But it's such a good game. So I'll just say that. But yeah, Witcher 3 is probably like realistically my favorite one. I loved that game.
Yeah. I wanted to ask that for a reason that'll become apparent. But I think. I think Witcher 3 is probably mine. You guys already said them. Witcher 3, Final Fantasy 6 up there. Do you consider Red Dead 2 an RPG?
No.
Even if I did, it wouldn't be anywhere near the top of my list.
Okay, calm down. Calm down.
To here.
Yeah,
we gotta
in a
keep
matter of
minutes.
minutes.
Red Dead 2 is pretty damn good, but I wouldn't call it an RPG really.
It's too linear, man.
I don't think there's a video game that's ever been made that has more pacing issues than
listen
Red
here.
Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, the problem with Red Dead is that your experience, my experience, Travis's experience, generally is going to be the exact same through the story.
Well, think of every JRPG you've ever played, like Hogue was
Well, that's what I'm saying. Well, that's why I like New Vegas. It's a lot different.
He didn't vote for Final Fantasy, so I mean, I don't.
But
no objections to staying there, I don't think. But
that's good.
I mean, we don't have to get into Red Dead. You know what? We'll save that for my Andromeda video. Whenever you just want to pillory me on it, when I go on vacation or something.
How did we get Andromeda and Red Dead 2 in the same sentence?
Andromeda's
People
second
talk about the
favorite
fact that I like
Mass Effect
Andromeda.
game, Yeah.
Oh, you like Andromeda?
Remember, we had that moment on the Mass Effect debate where Lord Cognito called him out for his Andromeda love, and then you started distancing yourself from your teammate. It was great. It was a great moment.
That's right.
That's hilarious.
I stand by it.
All right. Let's get into what some currently playing games. But before I do it, we got a super chat from Mr. Tal that I would like to put up if the chat wants to do it.
I can see it. Yeah. Tao, $20 super chat. Man, thank you very much, man. Morning Bitcasters, everyone's favorite lawyer with the flair for the theatrics, Mr. Seven, and Boyfriend Dungeon Stream Dan. Tie Guy Travis, keep up the good fight. And what the heck is it? Oh, Fast and Furious leader, our big brother and yours.
Our big brother and yours. It's a cast call reference. Thank you, Tao. Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it.
Beautiful, man. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. All right, guys.
Try to be theatrical for the record.
So we're going to get into Horizon as part of a bigger conversation. So before we start talking about Horizon, because I do want to hear from you guys on that, because I only have like 45 minutes in it. What else are you currently playing that we want to talk about? Anything good?
My whole week was Cyberpunk and Horizon, depending on whether my kids were around.
Yep.
I am also playing Cyberpunk. So I got about 10 hours into 2077 on the Series X when it launched. Yeah. Ran into a bunch of bugs and I went, nope, don't have time for this. Put it down. And I started playing when the new thing came up and getting a very different experience, which I'm sure Hogue is as well.
It is very different.
So
very different.
Have either of you actually played the whole game and finished?
No.
Travis, you haven't, Hogue?
I have not.
Yeah, I fought my way through 70 hours. Back in the day, I punched myself into space with a bad physics interaction. I fell through the map. I had 3 hard crashes in the first, 5 hours. It was good. It's good. It doesn't do that anymore, folks. And in reality, it's such an interesting week for video games. It was so wild for them to just drop this week because it's like, well, that to me is the real launch of Cyberpunk 2077. Like it feels like it released this week to me.
Yeah,
even though I've played through it. It is so, we'll talk about it in substance. I know it's on the agenda, but it is so much better and more polished. I still have issues with the design. We can talk about it if you want. But it released this week in all honesty.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I feel as well. Yeah. And it shows, like if they had spent this extra year doing this, I feel like that game would have had a completely different role in the lexicon of video games. It's really sad. It's devastating. The other game I have to talk about that I've been playing this week is Crossfire X, which we don't have to talk about it long.
We
but
saw that.
I did play a lot of that game.
So I am curious to go back to Cyberpunk. So I put 135 hours or so in at launch. And I did have some bugs and, some stuff here and there, nothing terrible. But that game is incredible. And I adore it. And I am very excited to get back to it. I loaded it up for like 5 minutes just to see it. Obviously far smoother now, but I think the coolest thing about this update, well, yeah, we'll get to that, but I'm interested to hear, Travis, once you get through kind of the whole game and the whole experience over time, however long with everything going on that takes you.
I'll say this, like there were so many problems the first time I played it. Like I just got destroyed by bugs, like even before I got to like the opening title screen. And so the situation this time is so vastly different. I'm like enjoying the story a lot more. I feel like the first time I played it, the story barely hit, and now it's hitting like really hard. And I'm like, damn, this story is good. And right after playing Horizon Zero Dawn, I'm like shocked at how different it is playing a game that has like a really good story.
Ooh, now that sounds like an interesting tack.
Hasn't been
what?
Just
now,
the story.
I agree with
Everything
Travis,
else.
by the way, that the Series X back in December of 2020, you had to deal with so much and worry about it collapsing and seeing all these things and really trying to fight your way through the experience that you're just hanging on with the story. And when you really have trust that the game's not going to just fall in on itself like a black hole, you can focus more on what it's actually telling you.
And it's good.
Now,
it's good
Travis,
so far.
Act 1 is the strongest part of the game.
Are you talking about?
But
Cyberpunk has. I'm curious to see you go through it, Travis. There's some side stories in that game which are incredible, and the main story, especially as you reach the end, of course, is incredible as well. That game's just fantastic.
I'm just saying the beginning, like first 10 hours that I've played this week, like the story has really impressed me, and it's crazy because I got farther in the story the first time I played, but I just don't remember it really, like to Hoag's point. Like it hits different when the game.
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah. It also has one of the latest title drops in gaming, so
That's that entire thing getting to that title screen is just the prologue. That's only the.
I know. I'm past that. I'm past that.
You can call it prologue, but they call it Act 1. So
they do. They call it Act 1.
This. Yeah. Nomenclature matters, Ains.
I booted it up on the PlayStation this time. I'm gonna tell you something. That DualSense, I love it or hate it. The first thing I did, I loaded my save up, and I shot Johnny Silverhand's gun. And
yeah, I think so.
Man, it was like, I was like, what the hell was that? It was like a double, I was like, this is nuts. And then everything else looks great.
Yeah.
PlayStation 5 version still doesn't have a lot of people. And just for you, Ains, because I know you went through it and did like a big crit build, didn't you? On the Xbox. They nerfed the hell out of criticals. So be aware. Anybody that's going to start playing, that build's going to be, it's going to be really, really, if you're going for that build, it's going to be a different experience than if you did it before. Okay. Because you can't double up a lot of stuff. You can't, and maybe it's better that way because there was really gross builds. Yeah, it really kind of balanced it.
They rebalanced the economy. Like it has a lot more pull into like what you should be doing and the normal kind of RPG loops. Like the first time through Cyberpunk, I could buy everything 20 hours in and be done. They redid a lot of stuff, and I'm not smart enough to be like, these are the million things they changed, but it's almost like a redesigned game.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's awesome.
Paul Tassi did a great thread about everything that's changed because he's probably played more Cyberpunk than anyone I know. But that's actually what made me want to hop back on when I saw all the different it's not just they fixed the bugs; it's they added stuff and substantially changed the way the game works. And I was just like, this is dope. Like I'm gonna get back in. So
yeah. I'm one of the developers at CD Projekt Red said this is much closer to the vision we had when launching the game. To your guys' point, right? So.
It feels like it.
Yeah, if they weren't forced out the door, this is probably what we would have got at release, which is cool. So we pretty much covered our Cyberpunk topic already. I'm looking forward to getting back to it. It's just there's too many other big things to play right now, but I'm definitely going to do a new playthrough this year again, and I'll just do a different build. I wanted to try something new anyway, so here in the crit build doesn't work the same, then all good. Did you guys see the you can get the Witcher sword? It's one of those hidden kind of collectibles, but now it lights up, just like in Witcher. All the emblems on it light up.
Damn it. Yeah. This is going to be my fourth playthrough. I'm just letting you guys know. This is number 4, and it's going to be, Horizon needs to hurry up and get done with. at this point. 'Cause, I mean,
Wait a minute.
that's the way
Just so we're clear, after the week I've had, am I the Horizon defender on this freaking?
I think
No,
you
I
are.
love Horizon. No, I love Horizon.
I love it
I
too.
love it.
I mean,
I also love it, but I have qualms.
So do I. I mean, my most popular tweet this week was about how I didn't think it was as polished as I expect from Sony first party. So
I've heard that from a lot of people. I've heard that from a lot of
also
people.
didn't think that, and Can we just jump into Horizon?
Go for it. Well, we're not going to talk about Crossfire X, so
I'll talk about it at the end when you ask me what you can read from me. But we don't need to spend a lot of time on it. But yeah, you can.
Yeah, let's go to Horizon because I want to hear from you guys. Like I said, I booted it up just to see it. Got it all loaded up in the big edition, and I put the red plates on my PS5 this week. And by the way, I tweeted out a picture of half red, half white as a joke, and I got like hundreds of replies saying it looks amazing. So I don't really know what happened there, but if
I do think it looked better than all red. I can't lie to you.
It kind of looked like a Harley Quinn kind of thing going on.
Someone said Harley Quinn. Everyone else said it looks like a Pokemon like tribute because it's red and white, and I don't know.
It kind of does.
I think it looked ugly.
Me too. Me too. I thought it was a joke. Like anyway, but anyway, I haven't spent a lot of time in it. I just wanted to see it. It looks cool so far. Obviously, I want to get into it. I'm looking forward to being able to spend time with it next week. But you guys said you're like, I know Hogue about 15 hours, Travis about 20 hours, Dan, I don't know how much, but why don't
probably about 10.
Who wants to kick us off with thoughts on how it is so far and how it compares so far to the first one?
Horizon Defender, you're up.
All right, well, I'll start. That's totally fine. I mean, I think I was on this very show talking about how Horizon Zero Dawn was kind of a middling experience for me story-wise, that it had pacing issues, that it had a lot of side quests that were problematic, that you really had to pound through Meridian because they had 600 people that wanted their chickens found or their belly scratched or whatever else. And so I was okay with it. It was like a 7 to me. Obviously, graphically very impressive when it originally released. And then you turn this game on, and there's a couple things that jumped out to me to start with. First of all, it's very interested in onboarding you. So it has a very long linear section to start out with. Then it has whatever the Witcher 3 equivalent is of that early area where it's just kind of a small area.
Yeah.
And so then you get that. So it's like tutorial 1. Then it's here's how an open world will work when we actually let you out. And then they start out with that, and then it blows open. I will say a couple things in terms of plot. One, the inciting event to this game, to me, a lot more driven, a lot better, setting you off on an adventure than the first game was. It still has the same problem that the first game did, which is just essentially the overall is like, we're going to be somewhere out there and work your way through it. And in this case, it's go west, young lady. And so that's basically what you're doing. I will say this. In terms of the story and the side quests and how they work together, I think massive strides have been taken to make them all link into whatever the plot line is for the town that you're in a way that is very reminiscent of what Witcher was doing in terms of setting its world. So we could talk about the plot in a second, but in terms of the world building, this to me is some of the strongest that I've seen in video gaming in a long time. Everything has a place. It has a reason for being why it's here on the river, the fights that it has, what the specific concerns it would have about its neighbors. The next place has something new to show you, and it has its own concerns and that kind of thing, with all the sub-quests being informed by who the person is, where they are, and even if they realistically are, kill 3 turtle dinosaurs, they're much better couched, in my opinion. So they learned that lesson there in terms of the overall world building, and that's what I love the most about this game. That's where I say, hey, I'm on an adventure. They've got some really nice adventure music. You're striding around, the sun sets over the mountain. You're enjoying that experience if you like that kind of thing. Where I had more trouble, interestingly enough, is the graphics, right? So that's where everybody points to as it being awesome. And it is. It's very pretty, very, very often. But to me, neither solution that they've provided is terribly satisfying. The high resolution, 30 frames per second, they use a lot of motion blur. I've gotten used to it. That's where I'm actually playing. It's not where my preference is. But this has, to my eyes, one of the worst performance mode implementations that I have seen. And I think that's because there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of grass. There's a lot of stuff in the air. And the fuzziness and how it looks, I just couldn't play it in that mode. So graphics wise, 30 frames per second, high resolution, great. I think the faces may be the best I've ever seen in games. The facial animations and the interactions with light are absolutely fantastic. But graphics, I come kind of middle of the road because you're playing 30 frames per second in an action game where like Twitch really counts. And you can feel it. It feels a little heavy. And then the last thing I would say, and I did tweet about this, this was on my social media getting either crap or praise, depending on which side you are on a console war. And I'm not on a console war at all, folks. It has polish issues. You clip through everything. The hair moves on its own. The climbing of the mountains is designed to be more organic. And I find that it has a lot of error inputs. And then you, again, clip through whatever it is that you're climbing. In a
You
way
go through ladders when you jump on ladders. Your character, like, swings through them. It's
she
really
swings through the
odd.
ladders when you jump on them. And I've had a number of ladders. You get to the top and she won't climb to the top of
The long neck.
Come
dude.
on, Aloy.
Yeah, I was on a long neck and she was just jumping back and forth between these two platforms, and I was like, "It's right there. Just grab
you got
it."
it, honey.
She like jumped back.
Yeah.
down.
No, and so it feels like really, really early Assassin's Creed, like with just error inputs all over the place. And it's, to me, it's like, okay, you answered a question which really didn't bother me, which is like, why are all these yellow things out there for Aloy to climb in the first game? But you tried to make it more organic, and it's just not there. So it feels bad a lot. And then the animations in general are just a little weird. Like, imagine you have mine tracks below you and you kind of half lean where you think you're just going to walk over them. You get that kind of, I don't know, PlayStation 2 side straddling and won't cross over the whole mine track. And then you go over and then she goes too far. And it's that kind of like little stuff that is, wow, that's not, I was just playing Ghost of Tsushima. I was just playing whatever. This is not what I expect from Sony first party studios. If there's nothing awful about it, understand it's not like dying or anything like that. I've seen the videos of people falling through maps, but if you have 3 million people playing anything, you can do those kinds of things no matter what. But so Horizon to me is pretty close to like a 9 out of 10, except for these kinds of things that are bugging me about its playthrough. So if they patch that, if they fix that up, I'm enjoying Horizon vastly more than the first because I am enjoying that process of seeing new things. As it turns out, I think one of the things I really needed out of Zero Dawn was just different biomes, dedication put into that world building, side quests that feed into the location rather than just being somebody up on a mountain needing to find their beads on a higher mountain. And that has really, really worked for me. But it isn't as, yes, this is definitely a 9 out of 10. This is a AAA masterpiece as I thought it would be when I was buying it.
So it's funny because Dan messaged me yesterday and asked, have you played Horizon? And I said, only, like I said, right at the beginning. And he said, is it me or, are the graphics not as, what'd you say, Dan? Like not as mind blowing as kind of
right.
Everyone.
Everything I've seen on, I won't say 70-80% of the stuff that I'm seeing and that people are posting online is stuff from cutscenes, a lot of them, and they look amazing. But I just got done playing Zero Dawn, and going from that to Forbidden West, I was expecting like, what? This is insane. This is, next generation. And what I got was, hey, this looks similar. It looks about the same to me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I mean, I messed with my TV. I went back and made sure I had the PS5 version downloaded. I was like, what is going on here? I said, because I was expecting to just get, knocked out of my shoes, and it just didn't happen. So, but, Hook's got some good points. I mean, I haven't gotten far enough in the story to really give it any kind of, critique, I guess. I just got out of the White Orchard part, I guess, of
that's the name I couldn't come up with. White Orchard.
Yeah,
White Orchard.
That's I just got out of that part, and maybe for about an hour or so. So I'm just kind of exploring. Like I don't have a whole lot of games on my horizon, no pun intended. So this one's going to be one of those that I get to explore every question mark that's on the map, every little thing. I'm just going to take my time with it. So I'll probably be playing it for a while. But I mean, it's fun. It's Horizon. It's very, very, very similar to the last game. There are some new, things here and there, weapons but in the first game, it came down to me. I used the 3 different bows, and that's where I'm trying. I'm probably going to head towards that direction again because I'm not a big, the traps work very specific situations, for me. And And sometimes like with a mission that says, try using your traps. I'm like, okay,
It does
that
like to
worked.
do that.
Yeah. So some of those, I mean, like the sling, that thing is worthless to me. The only thing that's good about it was
put away
because
javelins. They're awesome.
I just got those. I think I haven't tried them out yet. But I'm waiting to see. I'm having fun and I'm enjoying it. Did not blow me away like I thought it was going to. I think Ratchet and Clank looked better, to be honest with you, but it's still great.
Are you playing performance or resolution?
Yeah, performance mode.
I think performance looks bad. I think it just looks bad.
It does.
I can't do 30 though, man.
That's my problem.
I think you got to. I think you got to bite the bullet if you want the graphics on Horizon because performance is bad.
I tried it for a little while, like maybe for about 30 minutes, and I was just like, man, I just, it's. But really, I mean, to your point, it's not a humongous difference between the 30 and the 60 because of all that motion blur, I think. But
yes,
I also don't see the big difference between, the fidelity, I guess. I don't see like where it's like, oh man, that looks like a real plant. It looks exactly the same to me. But also, I'm 47 and my eyes are garbage, so I could be completely off. I'm still I still have a good time.
I think you're right, Dan. Like my impression of it graphically is that it's a game that was made for screenshots, but not for actually playing. Like if you're in stills and you take a screenshot, it looks fantastic. But as soon as you start moving, you're like, there's film grain on it. There's the motion blur that you can turn off, but it doesn't actually fully turn it off. You still get blur when you spin the camera, and there's just all these issues with the graphics that I was sort of just like, this game's beautiful when you post a screenshot, but when you're actually playing it, you're kind of like, this is like, there's something about it. Like to Hoag's point, its performance mode is underwhelming.
Can I ask you guys something real quick? The three of you guys that really played it. There's times where like you get that blue shimmering line across, and sometimes I'm like, okay, it's your charger or whatever, your mount. Right. Yeah. But then there's times where I'm nowhere near that thing and I still see this like sunspots. It's like they I don't know, turned up the sunspot setting to like the image. Yeah, I was just like, what?
They got a little JJ in them on this. They do.
Yeah.
I was just like, especially early on. I've seen it less lately in the last few hours that I played, but early on, man, I was just like, man, I didn't even have a mount.
Well, one of the things
it's because it's supposed to be whenever one of the machines is looking at you or looking near where you're at, and because you start off in a small valley, there's almost always a machine looking almost at you for like the first 10 hours, so it just happens a lot.
Okay, maybe that's it. It was crazy.
Yeah, well, and you say beautiful in screenshots. I think that's right. It's also beautiful in conversations. So one thing I definitely noticed is the conversations are gorgeous. They're doing a trick, and you see that you pop in and out of the conversations a lot, and it's dynamic lighting in a lot of places, and you can see just like when you would hit photo mode in certain games and everything looks a little bit better because they changed out resolutions or whatever. Clearly, in the PlayStation 5, and maybe this is because of the load times or whatever the amazement of the PlayStation 5 is, they're swapping out certain things. Like they are prettier faces when you're having those dialogue conversations than if you look at them when you're standing there. And look, I'm not against you making it pretty, but some of those screenshots you see online, some of the things that are like, wow, this is amazing looking, are in those entirely controlled environments, right? You don't have any dynamism to that. And I think the dialogue is great. They do a pretty cool thing, I think, when you're between questions where they go back to like the two of you standing there and then they fade in the wheel, which I think is the best implementation I've seen of that concept. It's little, but I really, really like that they do that. But that's entirely within their control. So you get like all this, light in the skin and through the earlobes and all this stuff. When if you then finish and you stand there, they don't look quite like that when you're in the actual world. So it's a lot of tricks. And then I think Travis hasn't gone yet, so I want to hear what he has to say. And then I think the last thing I want to talk about is kind of Aloy as a character, because I don't think she's a terribly good one. But let's go, Travis.
So let me give my first impressions. My first impression, I think we've all kind of alluded to it. Do you need to say something, Ains?
I was just gonna say I'm surprised at how many people, and I know Mo's happy right now. There's several people in the chat saying play it on 30 FPS mode.
You gotta, and that's not my choice. I mean, I play performance on everything, and I could not do it. I could not do it on.
I'm telling you, Ains, you're going to be on.
No, I tried both. I do that at every game that has it. I try it right away, and there's no way.
Cyberpunk was like that last year.
Cyberpunk was terrible. 60 FPS at launch. Cyberpunk didn't look good. but you can't play it in 30.
The one thing I will say is I think the tutorial area, which I have to believe you're still in at 45 minutes, is I think the worst presenting graphically part of the game. I don't know when they made it, but I don't think it presents what Forbidden West actually is very well. So check it again when you get to the next area.
I will, but I'm telling you, I can't play 30.
I feel bad for you because maybe they'll make performance.
My eyes hurt when I play 30.
No, it's just
I'm physically ill.
I play Halo every day at 120 frames. I cannot.
I play Halo at 120 frames.
I will say Halo has a lot less
just
going on.
You don't have the good reflexes and can shoot well. I mean, it's okay. It's okay. Tell us about 30.
1v1 me, Ains. 1v1 me.
You don't want that.
I do. I just asked you to. My first impression of Horizon Zero Dawn or Horizon Forbidden West is that you get those games that are really hyped of games that you loved, and you expect the sequel to find ways to reinvent them and push the series forward a lot. Some notable examples are Grand Theft Auto 5 versus Grand Theft Auto 4. You play Grand Theft Auto 5 and you're like, okay, this is what the next Grand Theft Auto should feel like. And then you get games like Fallout 4, which my opinion is it's sort of more of an incremental improvement, and it doesn't really change the game as much as you thought. And I think Horizon Forbidden West for me falls into the latter category in that it is an improvement in a lot of areas, but to me it's an incremental improvement. It largely feels like the same game I played at the beginning of the PS4 era, and it doesn't, in my opinion, really do. I know it's in my opinion, do enough to.
You say it the most, man.
I know I do. You know why? It's because anyway, we can get into this, but yeah, it's a reviewer thing because everybody. The number one comment again is people being like, "What do you say things like they're facts?" And I'm like, because I'm a human. Anyway, so. Yeah, I just think it doesn't really do enough to really impress and feel like the next Horizon game, which to me is the most disappointing part, is the areas that it's exactly the same game. That's sort of where I kind of lean on it. Now, there's performance issues, which I don't really care that much about performance. It looks fine. Especially in dialogue, to Hook's point, and in screenshots and stills, it looks great. The story I don't think is super good. I had the same criticism of the first game. I just thought the story really overall wasn't that great. But the writing and the world building, to Hook's points, are top notch. Really good. The characters are great. Like except for Aloy, really. The other characters are really good. And I actually like Aloy compared to a lot of other open world games. To me, they're the most annoying part. But I will say this, and nobody's talking about this, which blows my mind.
All right.
The hand holding in Horizon is the worst I've ever seen in any game. And Aloy will not shut up, and there's no way to turn it off. She talks constantly. Every time you pick up a flower, she's like, I picked up this flower. I guess I'll put it in my backpack. And I'm like, dude, shut up. Like, oh my God, it's so annoying.
Can I tell a funny little story, right? So I'm playing Horizon with my kids, and especially my oldest, who's really into like the big epic adventures now. And we're in a cave, no spoilers. Bristlebacks were in the first game. You're dealing with some bristlebacks. And we get so much of the reminder, the talking to yourself, oh, I should really get after those bristlebacks. I think the bristlebacks might be the bottom of the cave. My daughter, who is a preteen, but is really a teenager, just starts for the next 2 hours while we're playing. Hey, we handled those bristlebacks. I think we need to get after those bristlebacks. The bristlebacks are real trouble in this valley, Dad. Have you hit the bristlebacks? Have you considered climbing up there to see if you could see some bristleback? She does this like for 2 hours, and it is the truth, Travis. That is 100% accurate. I actually went into the menu. I rarely do this to see if they had a toggle for
me too.
The "you're a moron" dialogue.
Yes.
Hey, I'm literally doing this mission right now. You don't need to tell me that I have to go do this mission. Stop.
Yeah, and yes, dude, this guy.
You're talking like she's some YouTube vlogger.
Dude, it's awful. It's like she's getting paid by the word or something. She has to talk every 15 seconds in
It
some
is.
capacity.
It's 20 seconds. It is.
It is non-stop. And I did the
guys-
same thing.
You guys were supposed to be hyping me up for this game, and all I've
Because
heard.
these are so small. I mean, in all honesty,
It is a small complaint, but
I
it
haven't-
bothers me. It bothers me, dude. Like I was like you, Hogue. I went into the settings to see if there was a way to turn off the dialogue.
I really
There
did.
is not. She talks constantly. She's always telling you what to do, dude. I've picked up like 4,000 pieces of stick, and I could pick up one right now, and she'll be like, my pack is full, but I'll put this in my stash. And I'm like, dude,
oh my God,
shut
every
up.
time.
Like, I know the mechanic of the game. Oh my God.
Talking about game logic, yeah, it's like, wait, all right, talk me through the lore of my backpack is full, but I'll send this straight back to town.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but
It's like,
that's not my biggest problem with the game. I do
it's
think
gaming, but it's like sometimes you hand wave that. You throw up a
just ignore it. Don't comment on it every time.
If you didn't comment on it, it would be more acceptable. But every time she says it, I'm like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's constant.
This is interesting, and the reason why I find this conversation very interesting to me right now is because, how do I say this? I was talking to Elu, who's in the chat, about this last night. Like, I'm old, we know this, but I love games like we joked about Morrowind, right? That game doesn't tell you anything. It just go figure it out. Figure it out. And I grew up with games like that. I love games like that. I love to just be thrown into a world and figure out how it works. And Redacted is that to a T. And I love it. So the fact that this literally sounds like the polar opposite, where you've got 10 or 15 hours of tutorial and prologue, and they comment on everything and you do.
I don't know if it's going to go away. I mean,
it doesn't go away.
Actually scares me. Like
it does not go
Horizon
away
is
ever.
very concerned that you're a moron. It is
It
very
is, dude. It treats you very stupid. And I even have that like mode where it turns off the UI and doesn't give you quest tips, and she still won't shut up. It's just it really, there's so much hand holding, and the tutorial just drags and drags. And then when you finally get past the tutorial, I was like, please stop talking. Like I was like hoping that it was just like a White Orchard special dialogue, and it does not turn off, because I've been out in the open world for like 8 hours now in the full open world, and she's just still yabbering and yammering about every little thing that I do. She's constantly commenting, and some of it is good. That's the bad part, is like some of it is like real dialogue where you're like, okay, this is important, but then she does it so much that you sort of just learn to tune out her voice. It actually reminds me a bit of Alan Wake, where like the narration was really good, but he's like talking the whole game, and so after a while you're like, all right, dude, like I get it. Like
Travis was on a roll until there, for the record.
I love Alan Wake. I love Alan Wake.
On Alan Wake.
I love Alan Wake. It's one of my favorite story games ever, but he does talk too much.
But he's a writer. He's a ridiculous intellectual writer that's too far in his head. What the hell is Aloy?
Aloy is not a writer, but apparently she's really concerned with. And here's the other thing, and this is something I should never complain about, but I have to complain about it.
Okay.
She speaks the words aloud. It's not like narrator. Like if you turn the camera, you can see her going, I'll put it in my stash, like with her lip. And you're just like, what? Who are you talking to? This is insane.
So there was a game last year. I was talking to my brother about this week, because it's ridiculous. She talks to herself so much. And there was a game last year called Chorus, which I really loved. I think some people liked it, some people didn't. But Chorus has the main character talking to herself the entire time. But they have an affected Batman kind of whisper voice for this is my mind, that I'm just talking. This is my internal monologue. And so much of what Aloy says would make more sense with a little echo, and like, I'm thinking about doing this thing, rather than shouting it into a cave. Like they add the cave echo when she says it in a cave. and it's like, okay. So no, they're very, very concerned. Now I think what you've got here is you've got a 4-quadrant directed game that is designed to be a AAA 30 million seller on PlayStation, that is significantly more complex than maybe Sony felt comfortable with. Whoever's having these conversations, you say, this isn't Ghost of Tsushima. I love, pretty simple in its nature. You got your sword, you got these 6 things you can do around the board, and you're just going to go do them. And this one has a lot more going on, especially with hunting, right? You said it feels like the same game, and it does, but this is actually my preferred version of people spending 5 years on doing something, which is like, all of this worked. Pieces of monsters, how they go into making your build better, how they go into improving what's happening. All of that worked, but it wasn't perfect. So they improved the loops here quite a bit, in my opinion. They improved what the features are in terms of tracking what you need to hit and having the jobs all work. And I know they added some of that stuff in the original, but all of that is better. You add world building, you add all these biomes, you add more interesting characters, you add more interesting factions, and you work off of what maybe didn't work so well in the first game. And now you have, I don't even know, I haven't even counted up the question marks in like your log, 50 different types of monster. I mean, it looks massive. And since all of them have this kind of interaction where you can just beat them, or, hey, I need that antler or whatever, they all work as these little puzzle games. And when you change out the composition of a group that you're fighting, every single time is different. Like they mastered that loop, but it's not a different loop. So to me, they went in the right direction. It didn't need like an overhaul. What it needed was a little bit better pacing, a little bit better storytelling. I tend to agree with Travis that it takes a little bit long to get running, but I think what worked so much better is that their White Orchard felt like White Orchard, and it didn't feel like, 6 people in different spots that need random things and a bunch of dialogue that was pointless. Like they still are clearly very invested in their world. When you start the game and you go over to the journals, I always check the menus when I start a game. You go over to the journals, it's like, oh, little character bios. Those will be nothing. I'll be interested in seeing little character bios. And like the very first one you enter is like 10 paragraphs long and is also a history of the earth from dawn till now. And you're like, well, this team at bare minimum is very invested in the story that it's telling. It believes in it thoroughly. And I like to see that. I like to see that, hey, you're all in. It's a little self-serious. It's a lot self-serious, let's be honest. But it's good to see that dedication. And then as that world opens, as you cross out of White Orchard, I like this, by the way, for spoiler-free stuff. We just keep calling it White Orchard. And you get out into the more open world. That's, to me, where it really starts to impress. Like you have a wild variety of places to go. It starts to look better, in my opinion. You could see where the time is spent. Some of the early stuff just doesn't match up. I would have... I know they built it and they spent all the time and resources in it. I would have cut that earliest linear tutorial section in half or more. Yeah. I mean, it is so long and not terribly useful for the rest of your experience in the game.
It basically shows you how to duck.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah. So I'll end kind of, I think we'll end the discussion with saying that this game is really good. It like I love all those criticisms aside, I think it's great. If I were doing an IGN review, early impressions, probably an 8 out of 10. But it's not a perfect game by any stretch, and I think you've kind of heard from all of us the various kind of levels of concern, but I think those are minor concerns compared to what is a very good, strong open world game with some really, really awesome characters and worthwhile experiences. I'm definitely going to finish it, but it is crazy playing it next to Cyberpunk 2077 and kind of feeling like I kind of unexpectedly am enjoying Cyberpunk more, but it's also my first time fully playing through Cyberpunk. So I hear I'm in for a treat, but we'll see.
Cyberpunk's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah. No, Travis hasn't played it. So we'll save Rick talks about Cyberpunk, especially in comparison to Witcher 3 and its many, many failings in that comparison at some later point.
I mean, I'm sure it's not as good as Witcher 3, but that's also kind of a high bar. You said it was your favorite RPG of all time.
It doesn't need to be as good. I don't find it to be remotely close. But
okay.
We'll talk about that at some point.
Damn. Yeah, I certainly agree. We'll talk about it later. But I'm really enjoying it. So
I don't think it's
funny. I'm on spoilers, even though this game is like almost 2 years old or whatever. It feels like it released this week.
It feels like you have to respect the spoilers because it launched this week.
It feels like it released this week. So yeah.
All right.
I agree.
Got a super chat for you, Dan.
Yeah, Xbox fan fit. Thanks, Luke, for the $2. First time, long time. Joe sucks.
That was right on cue from Luke. Thanks.
True,
sir.
from what I know.
Thanks, buddy.
Very true.
Yep, this is true. And Joe said something negative about Red Dead. So yeah, I completely agree with Luke here. I'm on board with it.
I didn't know there were people that really didn't like Red Dead. That's surprising to me.
He's weird.
I have a litany of issues with Red Dead.
He's called Mr. Bad Take for a reason. Don't worry about it. All right. So on Horizon, you guys kind of covered all the aspects that I wanted to touch on. So the question I wanted to ask you guys is, as you talk about PlayStation Studios, this is their first kind of major release in that vein. I guess you had Miles Morales, but I think everyone was looking at Forbidden West as kind of this first PlayStation 5 generation gigantic AAA experience from them. And you think about, I was going back through, because I'm weird, I was going back through the things Sean Layden said before he departed. And he did an interview last year where he said a couple things that I wanted to touch on. So he was talking about the cost curve of development of these AAA experiences, like Forbidden West continually going up. And he expected that in early PlayStation 4 generation, they were about 100 million on average to develop, and he expected that to double in this generation for the the top tier games, and that provides obviously a lot of risk for these companies. And then he also said what will happen is you'll end up with 3 or 4 silos of games or game types that will continue to exist, and the variety is squeezed out. That's a quote from him. And kind of what I wanted to ask you guys is, as you look at PlayStation coming into this generation, we've got Forbidden West now that you're playing it. We've got God of War, which for all intents and purposes, we don't know. We haven't seen a lot of Ragnarok yet, so we don't know what it's going to be like. But from what we have seen, from what we know about development, it's still cross-gen development, just like Forbidden West. The gameplay they did show looks very similar to the first God of War.
You want to talk about iterations? That one looks like it could have come from the first game.
That's my big worry about this whole generation.
That's kind of where I'm going. And then we've got Gran Turismo 7, which was an evolution of sport, and they just built upon it for this next release. But as I look at PlayStation Studios and the celebration they kind of get from a first-party perspective, right? How do they do? I guess the question is, how do they evolve so that these releases don't start to feel samey? And I guess the follow-up question to that is, do they need to evolve? And do people care if they feel samey? Because as I started thinking about this before the show, I was thinking Nintendo is the prime example of having IPs that people care about with sometimes, not always, sometimes minimal evolution, and people eat it up. I mean, we know that. And we know Horizon Forbidden West is selling well already. It's kind of blown the doors off. We know God of War is going to sell like crazy. Can PlayStation continue to develop these same games in the same way generation after generation? And is that viable for them? And do you guys personally care if they go that route?
Yeah, I can start on this one because I think about it a lot. First, to your Nintendo comments, I would argue that Nintendo, though they don't really evolve in the traditional way a lot of people think of it, they do experiment and try new things all the time that are super weird. And I think that's what keeps their fans engaged, is that like you really never know what you're going to get sometimes with Nintendo. And I think that is their angle. They look at evolution as not a straight line of like more pixels and bigger open worlds. They view it as like, well, maybe we can add motion controls for some reason, or just silly stuff that you kind of aren't expecting. Which I think that's their path. It's very experimental and weird. For PlayStation, I feel like their evolution has always been getting closer to movie style storytelling. That seems to be the direction that they want to go, and fun third person experiences. But I do think that they're going to have to evolve this generation, which I think they'll do, but we're still really early in the generation. And an example of evolution would be, God of War. When it came out, it was a huge evolution over, the last God of War game that we got. And I think that seeing Horizon Forbidden West sort of be the same thing, Ragnarok possibly being very similar, and The Last of Us 2, not part of this generation, but also a very kind of iterative game over the first Last of Us. I do think that now they have a pattern and possible problem with, well, how are they going to make the next, God of War, kind of reboot, or even Spider-Man. Spider-Man was another really like unique game when it came out, and now you've got Miles Morales, which is sort of like, again, repeating that. So I do think they have a problem. I do think they have to address it, but I think it's probably too soon for them to start worrying about that. They're gonna have to have a lot more, I think, kind of repeat for them to really get in trouble. Although I will say this, when I was sneaking around in Horizon, the first thing I thought was, oh God, please don't do this to Horizon. You have to stealth a lot at the beginning of the game, and I was worried that it was just going to be another stealth game like Last of Us or what they turned Uncharted into in Uncharted 4. So
Uncharted 4. That's another conversation for another time.
Yeah,
But
I'm not
you
happy
say
with that one.
evolve, and this is where I think PlayStation gets into real trouble, right? You say God of War evolved. It evolved into an over-the-shoulder, third-person, open-world adventure game. It evolved into everything else that PlayStation makes.
So that's exactly where I was going to go, Travis.
Okay.
You look at Ghost of Tsushima, you look at Days Gone, those were new IPs, but very formulaic.
It's a third person over the shoulder action adventure game. And I did the list back when they announced what they were going to do in the launch window in the early days of the PlayStation. And it's like, you're fine if you like a well-resourced, generally polished, which I think is what you buy from Sony, over the shoulder third person action adventure game in a either partial or completely open world. That's their only variant, right? Last of Us Part 2, big, not open. God of War, big, open-ish. Ghost of Tsushima open, Horizon open, Spider-Man open. And if you like that, that's great. Obviously, people like it. It's probably the most popular kind of form outside of FPS. Like that's what you're fighting between in terms of popularity. But I think they've gone in a completely wrong direction. There's a couple of reasons why I think that. I think one, honestly, I think the open world publishers, whether it's Ubisoft or Sony or anybody else, they deliver too much. And I know that sounds weird, but when you're playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Valhalla, or maybe even Horizon, I obviously haven't gotten far enough. I think you're going to have a $200 million budget. I think you could actually sell $60 versions of half of these games twice. I think that's the reality of the situation, that you don't need 100 hours in these various games. And I think they are getting themselves in traps. Oh, well, we're not going to be able to sell it unless we deliver X, Y, or Z. And, the original God of War, I think you could beat in 6 hours. And that was a big time game for them. And I think they've essentially built up in their heads, maybe across publishers, that people only play for these giant games, but I think they're wrong. And I think that Nintendo, as Travis said, Nintendo deserves vastly more credit. Nintendo puts Mario in a paint game or a soccer game or a tennis game or whatever, and then it does Labos and it does Garage Builder and it does, we're going to mess with putting paint down on the ground, and if that works, then we're going to make a franchise out of it. Nintendo is constantly trying to build that next franchise. Splatoon is the hugest seller out of nothing because they just said, screw it, let's paint some shit.
Kids are going to shoot paintballs everywhere.
Yeah. And it's a great game.
And now it's one of the most popular games that they have in their ecosystem. So it's like, that's what you should be doing. Sony, you have a huge war chest. This goes for Microsoft too. This is not Sony limited.
No.
Figure things out. When you were in the PlayStation 2 era, Sony was funding everything weird. And then it became Uncharted, and then Uncharted became Last of Us, and God of War became Uncharted and Last of Us. And then Spider-Man, I think, is the right way to make that, but it is a variant of what you were already doing. So if you have a feel like you want in your Sony ecosystem, what would a polished first-person shooter look like from Sony? Killzone is years old and gone, and now it's Horizon. So you had their first-person shooter become an action-adventure in an open world. And they don't have a good variety on any kind of vector that you look at for what they make at this point in time. So I think they've gone completely the wrong direction. I think the budget in these things, if it's true, has gone in completely the wrong direction. I think art direction matters more than all these bells and whistles that they throw on these things. And if I'm being honest about Horizon, one of my initial comments was, you threw all this stuff into the air. You put flowers and bushes everywhere because you can, but I don't necessarily think it looks better than if you were more judicious with what you were actually putting out there in the world. Everything is cluttered. Everything is cramped. Yes, you can get these amazing views, but you didn't have to. And there are ways to have better art design. Nintendo, frankly, with their mobile cellular device chip in a 5-year-old system, figures that out very often. So I have in terms of variety, in terms of what they're putting out there, in terms of their model, I have more respect for Nintendo than I do for Sony saying, well, okay, we'll make it higher resolution, we'll make it more movie-like. And I am really thoroughly enjoying Horizon. But if this wasn't a year separated from the last time Sony actually delivered a product, I don't know that I would love it as much. When Last of Us and Ghost of Tsushima were right on top of each other, okay. It's not, I needed to have variety. I need to go in a different direction. I've actually enjoyed Cyberpunk and Horizon next to each other because it's like, yeah, they're RPGs, but they're really, really different.
They're very different. Yeah. I think that's what I was saying earlier, is going between them. It's sort of like, these are very different games. And,
the flavors, they have completely different flavors. So it is nice, I think, as a combo.
So really good points. And you guys kind of expounded upon some of the thoughts running through my head and kind of why I brought up the question. So, Dan, I'm going to go to you because I know we've touched on this topic before, and I know that you really enjoy. Well, we all really enjoy these experiences, and I don't want anyone to take away from this that I don't. Horizon was my favorite new IP last gen on PlayStation. I adore it. I can't wait to really dive into Forbidden West. God of War is an absolutely incredible title in my opinion, one of an all-time great, but. Based on the conversation we're having, Dan, I know you really enjoy these experiences. You've loved most of these games, I believe, that they've put out in this vein. Are you? What do you feel about this? Like, do you feel that this is a valid conversation, or are you like, I love it, give me more of the same?
I mean, I think both. I think you can have this conversation, and I think it's a completely valid conversation. However, in the last 3 weeks, I have played through The Last of Us Part 2, Days Gone, Ghost of Tsushima almost all the way through, and Uncharted a little bit.
What?
That's amazing game time, Dan.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just saying, and also Horizon Zero Dawn. So that formula, that over the person, third person, that's me to a T.
That's where you
But
live.
that's why
where I live.
Fine.
That's what I love to play.
Yeah.
I also enjoy first person shooters when done right. Like Cyberpunk. I mean, I really played it 4 times.
As a
Obviously, I like
shooter,
that too.
you think Cyberpunk is done right?
No. As a shooter?
Yeah.
Then what are you talking about? I mean,
You said you enjoy first-person shooters when done right.
Oh, FPS. If it's for the perspective, I guess.
Sure.
Oh, I see.
Then that it's more of a RPG. Obviously, to me, it is.
Yeah.
But I mean,
it's not a
wheelhouse.
fantastic shooter. I wouldn't describe it that way.
No.
Yeah.
It's not. Yeah, it's not a really good shooter. It is what it is. But in my first playthrough, I think I didn't even shoot the gun hardly at all. It was mostly doing something completely different. But I'm fine with it. I'm fine with them continuing. If it makes them money and it sells, that's fine. But you have to kind of open it up. You have to let the studios kind of do what they want. I think they've proven. I think several of them, maybe. I know, didn't Ben go over to help Naughty Dog? Isn't that what they're doing now? Didn't they send their Ben Studios?
Oh, Ben.
The ones that they did, yeah. The ones that they gone.
He said, did Ben go help? Like, Ben who?
Ben has been supporting everybody as far as the reports.
Yeah, they kind of, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
Days Gone, I think I reviewed it for the site. I think I gave it a 7. I enjoyed the time with it for what it was. I know there was a lot
massively
of issues,
underrated
especially,
is what it is.
I mean, I liked it.
What is?
Oh, man.
Days
Well,
Gone.
I think
terrible. No.
Oh no.
Oh, guys, sorry. I see you tweeting about this, and that game is.
We'll have to sidebar that.
Yeah,
We're gonna have to
sidebar that one. I enjoyed my time with it. I've enjoyed my time with most of those kind of games. So, that's what I want. I want more of that. Keep giving it to me. If it's a new IP, fine. I'm take the risk. See what you can do with it. You've got amazing studios, amazing devs, and they've proven it. Ghost of Tsushima. If it weren't that year for what was it? 2020? Is that when it released?
I think it was 2020, Game of the Year 2020. Hoglo.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
That would have probably been my
Did you say, oh,
game of the year.
Travis is having a morning.
What game was it?
Ghost of Tsushima.
Oh yeah, no way.
Yeah.
What the hell is your 2020 Game of the Year, Ty?
I'm with Travis on that. I think Ghost of Tsushima is
Half-Life, Alex.
Oh well, I didn't play Half-Life.
Yeah, I know you didn't, because you would have given that the Game of the Year.
I played it in 2021.
$1,000 it would have taken me. Sorry.
But yeah, I mean, it's that game was amazing to me, because it was just what I wanted, and I don't need these overcomplicated things. I want you to hold my hand during these games. The accessibility options. That's the first place I went in Horizon, and there's several of them where I'm like, why was this not turned on by default? Like when you go to your white weapon wheel, put it to the slowest. That's so dumb. Like, why would you have it on? I understand challenge and stuff. All my stuff is custom. I've got the custom difficulty levels, which I think locks me out of some stuff, which I don't care about. Also, like picking up certain things on your kills. It's stuff like I'm looking at it like this is stupid. Why not just have this automatically in the game? It's just, it doesn't make sense to me. So that's the first place I go now of any game. And even with The Last of Us 2, they had so many accessibility options. I can't see very well sometimes. So that contrast mode that they have in there, fantastic. where it basically turns everything blue or yellow, and you can see stuff that you missed. That's how bad I can. My eyes
You
are.
realize that they make these things called glasses that you can.
Yeah.
I've got contacts.
Well,
I've
obviously,
got-
You got to use the accessibility mode.
well.
Zane.
No, I use them all the time. But anyway, I mean, the point is, I mean, just keep doing this. I'm fine with it. You know, God of War was an amazing game.
What?
You know, I understand why people, especially God of War fans, you know, it was such a departure from the, you know, regular God of War. I get that.
Oh, what are you gonna say? I think I might agree with you on this
I'm
one.
perfectly fine with the rest of the panel enjoying a 30-hour prologue that doesn't start a story at all. I think that's fine. But I'm sure that we're going to get that story in the next God of War. Maybe it'll be a prologue to the third one. Who knows?
Hey, by the way,
Honestly,
check out the
Hogue,
comment we just got.
I think you're gonna find an ally in me in this one because I do not think that God of War was all that. But my problem with it is more that you fight the same like 4 enemy types that whole game. I was
You circle the
astounded.
damn pond and you do the same thing, and it's a
Oh my
MacGuffin
God.
chase for 30 hours.
I'm a simple man.
I can feel the downvotes coming. By the
Yeah.
way,
Let 'em
Downvote me
come.
for
Let 'em
this.
come.
It's my number 8 game of whatever that was, 2019.
Yeah.
You can watch me talk about it for 10 minutes. And yeah, it's a prologue to a story that I'm looking forward to actually experiencing when they deign to
Wow,
make
we
it.
got
for
some
me.
wild opinions on this panel.
Yeah,
I'm loving it. This is great.
by the way, check out this comment. I figure you guys would like.
You know, going back to that real quick, I didn't
Not
know that was
supposed
a
to be a
thing
narrator,
until I
but
put
yes.
my earphones on. Apparently, my ears are garbage too, because
Huh?
I didn't hear anything. You know, I mean, I heard her say it every once in a while, but when you put like the 3D audio on, it's so bad. You guys are 100% correct.
It's because she mumbles.
It's constant. Yeah,
He couldn't
She
hear it
does.
because of the mumbling. She does mumble
yeah.
to
It's really
herself.
kind of
Well-
under her breath, but when you got that 3D audio and it's like right there, it's just like God damn.
Well,
You know,
my
we never did
God.
talk about it. Like, so Aloy is a character. They're clearly, it's like Master Chief or somebody, but it's like she doesn't have anything. But I have to go west. Only I can save the world. And like there is no separate
oh, she's super annoying.
motivation, and it's very boring to me. It's like a story where everybody else is more interesting than who you're playing. It's wild,
That's
and I felt
most
that way in
video
the
games.
first game.
That's most video games, though. Most
Well,
open world ones
I don't
are.
even know what to do with this panel right now.
Yeah.
Alone.
What
Let's just
Aloy
end the
is boring?
show.
Aloy is boring. Can't be a wild, off the beaten path opinion here.
God, no,
Oh, man.
I don't think that is. But I'm laughing at the fact of all the opinions that we're throwing out here about some of the most cherished games of the past few years.
Well, hey, look, you can love a game and realize it has issues. In fact,
God of
that
War
is my
number
job.
8. That's
So-
a top
Yeah.
10 game to me. It's
I
just
needed that laugh this morning, boys. I needed
Yeah.
that. That was
You guys
good.
want to talk about
Yeah,
Breath
God
of
of
the
War is
Wild for a
great.
minute?
It's just
No?
I don't think it's game of the generation. I mean, come on.
God of War was not the game of the generation. No, it was not.
Agreed.
Jesus. All right.
It was just
so
a Rise clone.
we touched on PlayStation Studios. Yeah, I kind of agree with what a lot of Jesus, man. So you guys made me lose it now.
Yes.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I'm going to be really interested to see over the next several years, or I should say the rest of this generation, what PlayStation does with these IPs. And if remember a while ago, they said they had like 30 games in the works and like 16 were new IPs. I'm going to be very curious to see what those new IPs look like, because we talked a couple weeks ago about their investment in live service games, right? And what they're doing there. So that's one aspect that I think it looks like or sounds like they're starting to build out to kind of counter this image of just being third person action adventure games over the shoulder. But I am going to be interested to see if these new IPs that are not live service, right? They're single player focused. Do they continue in the same kind of template, or do they start to kind of get a little more creative?
I think they'll get more creative. They bought Bungie for a reason. They're going to do games as a service. They're going to start doing shooters. You got to assume now that Killzone isn't a thing. I think they're acquiring companies that do the things that they know they don't do well right now.
Resistance.
Well,
Bring
well,
back Resistance.
maybe you guys aren't having enough imagination for microtransactions and making money. I mean,
Yeah.
Ubisoft has been trying to cram live services into everything that's single player focused for a long time now.
Oh, I think they'll do that too.
Bungie might be saying, all right, okay, you guys are now tasked with figuring out how Horizon can have a Christmas time service, and we make some money selling you reindeer antlers for your mount, and go to it, Bungie. We're buying you to make us some money. So just because it's single player focused doesn't mean you can't cram live services into it. So
That's
True
true.
that.
hang on.
Very true.
True that. Yeah, no, I can see that happening too. But
Yeah.
I do think with their messaging saying they want to develop 10 live service games, they're talking about different types of games. I still think they'll do their premium thing, but they clearly need other revenue. And we'll see. We'll see how much they start to Ubiify their open world games. I hold out hope that they won't do that, but I can see it. I can see it, Hogue.
Yeah.
I can see the Easter Bunny outfit on Ellie. I can see it.
There is something nice about buying a product and saying, at least the promises right now are that this is the product. Yeah. I like live services. I like some of that engagement, but I was actually playing a board game the other day and I was thinking, hey, I own all this. It's not going to change. It's not going to disappear. And that's lost in a lot of corners of video gamedom. Horizon, you look at it, you say, hey, I get what I get. There's a certain satisfaction to that.
I completely agree. And they've done a good job with these titles we've talked about, God of War, Horizon, Ghost of Tsushima, of saying it's kind of an older school mindset. You pay your money. Here's the product you get. It's a complete product. It's generally polished. It's content complete. There's something to be said for that.
Well, I think another thing is, I mean, you've got the same stuff. I do. I understand what you're saying. But you've got a new generation of consoles.
I kind of disagree with what he said, but that's fine.
You've got a new generation of consoles that haven't been really utilized, at least their power, to the fullest extent that they probably could. You can probably do new things with that too. But I don't know what those are, and I have no idea how they'll implement it. They're much smarter than me. So they could take a game like Horizon, that is strictly developed for the new generation, and this is anybody, and this is Xbox, everybody, and maybe put in some new gameplay mechanics that you couldn't do, a generation ago. Something I don't know what that would be exactly, but there's got to be something in there, make things a little bit more, I don't know, reactive, and it's there's something to be
AI.
said.
How about AI?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
or the industry hasn't moved forward at all in like 15
100%.
years.
That's why I don't like always the focus being on graphics, right? Because there's so much
Right.
more to a game than the graphics conversation.
Yep.
Yeah, you can do it.
Or 60 frames, Ains. Sometimes 60 frames.
Wait, you're the one preferring graphics. We just talked about that.
I know. I'm saying you said like, oh, I can't play a game if it's not 60, and I'm like, well, it's not always about that.
We've gotten spoiled, man. We've gotten spoiled.
Nah.
So anyway, you kind of gave me the segue, Hogue, as you brought up Ubisoft. So we'll just jump over that because we did have that on our list of things to talk about. Is that it's kind of a similar comment about Ubisoft, is that they came out this week and talked about some of their performance and revenue. And I know that most people, well, not most, some people are not going to like hearing this because I talked to people like Dan and Mo and others that really preferred kind of the older Assassin's Creed experience. But whether you like it or not, Valhalla has now passed $1 billion in revenue. Single game for Ubisoft. It is the most profitable Assassin's Creed game they've ever had. And so they are looking, apparently it's an internal kind of design methodology with Ubisoft to keep players engaged in a game and continue to have content and microtransactions within it, like you were just talking about. So that's past $1 billion. And they're also reporting that players spent 45% more time in Far Cry 6 than they did Far Cry 5. And so they are avidly better. Yeah, it is better. Yes. They are avidly looking at how to basically keep people in these single player experiences and ongoing revenue streams at the same time, a little counter to what we were talking about with PlayStation's current roster anyway. So the other conversation, I don't know if we really want to touch on that Ubisoft mentioned, is that they can remain independent. This is his quote. He said, "We can remain independent. However, we would review any acquisition offer that was put forward."
It's a non-story.
Yeah,
I know it was picked up in all these places. I tried to stop them. I couldn't.
You tried.
I did. This is what I do. So I DM'd games industry. I think I did. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I just tweeted it out.
Games industry.
I do. I'm doing this more behind the scenes than you think. No. So let's talk corporate law for a second.
Oh no. You're on a timer.
Okay, that's fine. Ubisoft is a French company, so I can't claim any province over French law, but they're also a company that's run by a board of directors that does generally abide by normal fiduciary standards. You can look up, I think it's Society Anonymous, whatever that is in French. I apologize. My worst grade in high school, folks. I apologize. But basically, a board of directors doesn't own the company. They can also own it as shareholders, but a board of directors is fiduciaries for other people's money, which means that a board of directors at a corporate level has to take into account any way that they can either keep that money safe or grow that money in a substantial way. So one of the main ways that's realized on a board of directors is if somebody rolls into town with a term sheet that says, we'll buy you for X amount of dollars, the board has an obligation to review that. And They can accept it. They can recommend it to their stockholders. They can reject it. They can do a host of things. But the board chair saying, of course, if an offer is made, we'll review it, is not saying one damn thing. Not even a little. Now you can try to put conspiracy theories on this and say, well, they're signaling they're interested in being acquired, but I don't read it that way, even remotely. And that being the story of this board member saying, yes, we will honor our board obligations is, as you could tell when I do these tweets or make these videos about this is an affront to everything that I know about court law. So come on, people. It's not a story.
Yeah, so I do generally agree with Hogue. I will say, I think the reason this became a news story, other than the obvious reason, which is that there's a lot of acquisitions happening lately, is that this same person who dropped this quote has in the past been a lot more stalwart in their messaging against being acquired. And
let's talk about Vivendi.
It was seen as a change of tone, I think.
Yes, that's how it was framed in that story. So Vivendi a few years back doesn't make an offer to the board. Instead, what Vivendi does is it starts creeping up their capitalization table. They start consolidating publicly owned shares until they're up at 25%, 27%, 28%. Because if you hit 30%, what happens is you have to have a hostile takeover bid, what we call a tender offer for everybody's shares. Hey, you're clearly interested in owning the company. You have to do that. So what happens when they hit 26% is Yves at Ubisoft and the family. Ubisoft, even though it's public and big, is still a family kind of company. It's got that personality of founder structure, says you get the hell away from my company, or you make an offer, but we are not going to allow you to just kind of squeeze us out by crawling up the cap table. So Ubisoft has very strong statements about trying to do it that way, and then consolidates its own investor class to start buying other public shares so that the Guimont family and everyone else has more of a hold on it so that they can't cross over that tender offer. That is entirely different in both scope and quality than what an offer to the board would be. And so, yes, they said some things about Vivendi because they didn't want to be hostily taken over through a tender bid. That's different than I am going to ask the board if I can buy the company.
This sounds like Yellowstone, man. I'm loving this. This is great.
Corporate law, mergers and acquisitions, it's weird and it's wild and it's fun, but you just have to get the rules right. And I know it's a headline to say, oh, well, Ubisoft's more interested in acquisitions now. That isn't what the board said. And you can counter this. I've had this conversation online if you can't tell, which is like, well, they're signaling. And it's like, I would be willing to bet that that's a question posed and they're answering it in the way that a board member has to answer it. So I don't know. Ubisoft, I still think, is the most likely to be bought next, which is the other confounding characteristic of this entire
right. Yeah, because then people will point to it and be like, Hogue, you were wrong. They were signaling. And you'll be like, no, it was just unrelated. Yeah.
They're the most likely because they have the highest presentation on the third-party charts everywhere. Yeah. Assassin's Creed, Ghost Recon, Rainbow Six. That Ubisoft is all over those popular game charts. They're the obvious next domino if somebody wants to pull that trigger.
Yep.
But it has nothing to do with the board isn't soliciting those bids with that kind of statement. They just aren't.
I think Travis is right. I could see Ubisoft in the next year or two getting acquired and people coming back to you and be like, see, you were wrong.
They're for sure going to do that. And that's why I've been staying away from this entire news article, because I was just like, it's lose-lose. Like if you comment on it, you're going to lose, because they're almost certainly going to get acquired, I think, in the next
that tweet is probably bookmarked so many times. So many times.
It would be less than the rest of my week, believe me. So no, it's totally fine. I just want clarity. Let's just present the things with the right context. Maybe you put in a paragraph that talks about board fiduciary duties. Okay.
Yeah. That goes over really well in
you can say a sentence. You can say a sentence that says,
most gamers can't spell fiduciary. I mean, it's not even a thing, man.
I don't think most people. You didn't even have to be gamers.
I've spent 3 years on a channel trying to help this conversation out. You're making me feel like Sisyphus here.
I love you for it.
That is what you are. I hate to break it to you. The same thing trying to give reviews to games. I'm Sisyphus as well. So yeah.
Well, you make the games. I don't know why you keep making broken ones, Travis.
Oh, God, would you fix Crossfire X already? Jesus.
I actually have not been messaged about Crossfire X and my bugs that I made. Thank God.
All right. So on to broader topics then. Netflix and 2K announced this week that they are collaborating to make a BioShock movie. This has been, if you remember, there was a point in time several years ago when BioShock was kind of top of the conversation, where they talked about potentially wanting to make a movie. Guillermo del Toro himself said he would love to make a movie in the BioShock universe. Yada yada at the time, and it just kind of disappeared.
I think is getting
Borderlands is already being produced.
Yeah. Isn't that the same?
Same. Netflix making Borderlands?
Netflix isn't doing it.
No. 2K is obviously they own it. But no, I don't think Borderlands is Netflix. Not that I'm aware.
It has the same owner though, right? Like 2K.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Yeah. It's still 2K.
So it's the same. Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. What I want to ask you guys is, okay, BioShock movie. I know Dan, especially one of his favorite all time. Me as well. Adore BioShock. Obviously, the first game is a little different from the third game. You know, you've got Rapture is kind of the most well-known location in in the BioShock universe. But you're now talking about turning this into a movie. Let's presume an 1.5 to 2 hour movie, right? What story out of the BioShock universe can you effectively tell in 90 minutes or 2 hours? How do you do that?
In the medium of TV or movies at all, period.
Well, that's the problem, right? Like when we saw the announcement for like the It Takes Two game being movie getting picked up, or show, I think it was. The one thing that I said was, oh yes, take a game that has a terrible story, but really good gameplay, and make it into something that is story based. And so with BioShock, you have a game that is fundamentally about being a game, like at its core.
That's kind of what the whole point of the story is. Yeah.
So, I want to believe in these things. I want to be optimistic, but I also watched the Cuphead show, and I don't trust Netflix farther than I can throw them on basically anything. So I hope BioShock is great. I think it was in development hell for a reason, because this is a tough nut to crack. And I don't hold out a lot of hope for Netflix cracking it.
So so let me say this. If you guys weren't aware, there's a book that was written called Rapture. It is a prequel to BioShock, and it's an excellent book. It's actually a fascinating story of how Ryan came into power, how he decided to build Rapture under the water, and stories about some of the main characters. So
it's very Randian.
Yeah, it is. Yes.
Yeah.
I think you can. I think there is a character and story arc to tell there. I just don't know how you tell that in a movie. And that's before you even try to capture the essence of Rapture and Big Daddies and Little Sisters and all the stuff that makes BioShock really cool. I don't know how you capture that in this medium. To your guys', I guess that's what you're saying.
There's no way you're not going to have Big Daddies and Little Sisters. So set your story there. They're the icons.
Yeah, but how do you even make that look cool? And I don't know.
I also have a million questions, and I not a lot of faith in movie and TV to do really anything in gaming, despite their recent success with Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't think that really proves they've cracked the video game nut. And there's a lot more buried bodies in the movie and TV industry when it comes to video games than there are successes. That is for sure. That said, and I have all the same problems with you guys. Like if they try retelling BioShock 1, BioShock Infinite, it's going to be a disaster, 100%. But I think the only way that they succeed is they tell a completely different story that doesn't rely on the same stuff that it relies about. And the good thing about BioShock is that there are infinite lighthouses. There are infinite possibilities. I'm sure one of those lighthouses has a story that can be told in the medium of movie or television. But if they try relying on the stuff that's in the game or telling one of those stories, it's going to be a nightmare, like without a doubt. There's no way you can tell those stories. So I'm interested to see what they do, but I am super nervous about that. But also, I have no stake in this game. Movies and TV bore me, to be honest. So
There is no way that the start of this movie isn't there's always a lighthouse and zooming in and leading us into Rapture. There's no way.
You're probably 100% right on that, Hogue. I would not be surprised at all.
All that stuff.
This is one of the possibilities, you know.
Here's the thing. I mean, I'd love to see it done well. To your point, it probably won't be. But you know, if a lot of these companies, Netflix, Paramount Plus, they're doing these long form movies in like 1 hour increments. Halo's going to be the kind of the same way. Series, yeah. Well, I mean, but it's really a long form movie. It's just told in episodic. That's what they call that. That's what it's been called. I've heard it called like a long form movie.
So yeah, I don't, not to interrupt you, Dan, but that was actually part of what held up Halo's production for so long. Is originally they were going to do a Halo movie. That was what 343 was going to do. And what they basically determined is that they couldn't tell a proper arc of a story in a movie, right? And that's kind of what I'm asking about BioShock is Halo's already been renewed for season 2 and apparently has a minimum of 6 seasons they're going to try and do.
It's crazy.
So because you have so much lore and story arc you can work with there. BioShock not as much, but still, wouldn't it make more sense, I guess is what I'm asking, to do a BioShock series to your point?
Right, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think they can do it. Taylor Sheridan has done Yellowstone. He's done Mayor of Kingstown. Both of those shows are really movies that are, you know, it's just the way it's done. You can't do it like Halo, you know. So he did like, you know, the whole series. It's this. That's what he calls them anyway. They're called long form movies. They're basically a series. I think you could do. I mean, The Witcher 3 or The Witcher on Netflix is a good example. It's a really well done, you know, but it's got a lot more source material. I would argue BioShock Infinite BioShock has basically as much material as you want, you know, Black Mirror style or something, you know, where you can do boom, 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 like 8 different stories that are completely unrelated that all kind of circle back to this universe that you're doing.
Man,
right.
I'm nervous about that.
I like your idea better than what we're likely to get. I'll tell you.
Yes,
that.
Yeah. I don't think it's gonna. The movie would suck.
I think TV fans. I enjoy TV too. I enjoy what you're talking about in terms of serialized storytelling. I do think that we are a little hard on what we've been able to achieve in 2 hours in a movie framework before. You can have excellent arcs with emotional characterization. And we did that long before you needed 10 solid hours to do these kinds of things. So do I think the BioShock story, some kind of fun adventure in Rapture that maybe isn't as unique as the game originally was, could you do that with just the environs? Yeah. I mean, I think an underwater city with those crazies walking around, if it's presented with high special effects and looking good, is going to be a success, because the story almost doesn't matter if you can deliver on the imagery and the visuals of that. Now, I have Netflix, to me, is hit and miss with whatever they wind up making there. Sometimes it looks cool. I really like their Lost in Space. Sometimes it looks like garbage. I don't, unfortunately, Dan, like their Witcher very much. So I mean, it's hit and miss.
That's funny, because I love Witcher and I didn't like Lost in Space at all.
I like both of them. But you know, I mean, but if you look at their movies, you know, I mean, a lot of them, they're always like, this is the, you know, they're starting to get nominated. You look at like The Irishman, but then you also get like that. What was it, like the Red Notice?
Sure, you got Ryan Reynolds,
right? Yeah.
That's all Ryan Reynolds does.
I mean, it's all over the place. I just don't think it could be one movie. It just couldn't be. I mean, and hopefully they get to that point, just like Halo did, where they're just like, okay, we got to do a series.
If it makes you feel better, if it's a movie and it's a hit for Netflix, it won't be one movie. I mean, that's how they roll.
Another one.
That's true. So Elu has a comment here. He says the biggest issue with video game movies is that movie producers and directors tend not to understand the heart of what gamers love from the franchise. Video game movies are rarely hits due to this.
Well, I'd say that they can understand it. I think the biggest problem with video game movies is that they tend to do that 4-quadrant thing. Let's make it broader. Let's get people that didn't play that game in here. Let's get Tom Holland playing a over the hump.
Tom Holland's going to be the big daddy
bartender, whatever it is that they got going on. You know, let's make it approachable for everybody. And very often, approachable for everybody means satisfying to nobody.
Yeah, very true.
Yep.
True. Well, I guess we'll see, guys. I don't have high hopes. I'm kind of like Travis, though. It's like I adore BioShock, but at the same time, this will not change my love for the games, whatever it is, right? If it sucks, it's like the new Resident Evil movie. I haven't watched it yet. I've heard it's god awful. I'll watch it at some point, but it's not going to affect my love for the games.
Right.
You know,
it never will. I think video game people are very used to tuning out movies and TV shows that are based on properties they love. So
I loved Arcane. I mean, to me, that's the biggest video game success we've seen.
I've heard great things. I haven't watched it. I've heard
that's
great.
Good. I mean, it has advantages of like there not being a story
not an
that
actual,
they come from, you know.
It's not that kind of game,
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the main advantage of that is it can be whatever you want it to be. It's kind of like if you made an Overwatch TV show or movie. But
it
yeah,
feels like it's cheating a little bit.
That's the other thing. The other news story this week was also TV related with them showing Master Chief's face in the Halo show, and just like the other one, I was like, you know what? It's not canon. It's a TV movie thing. Like as a Halo fan, I kind of don't
know
care.
the actor. Like,
yeah, we know what it looks like.
You know what it looks like. That's another. I
also agree with that decision. Like, you can't not show somebody's face if they're the main character in a story. Like, they tried that on you know the Mandalorian, and they were like, "Yeah, we can't really do this. Like, we have to show his face at some point."
Well, then they went back. That's Pedro complaining in the Mandalorian. Yeah. That's where you get all that. I'm upset that they don't show my face stuff.
But I was upset as a viewer. I was like, I want to see his face. Like, you can't really connect with the person behind the helmet. Yeah,
no.
I wanted to see it.
I thought Mandalorian works best when it's not showing Pedro.
Just watch Game of Thrones. It's the same guy. You know, I mean, you know what his.
I mean, I know what he looks like, but dude, the emotion of looking in somebody's eyes helps you connect with them. If you can't see their eyes, it's sort of that's a very human thing.
Boba Fett was much worse because you saw his face all the time.
But that had a very different problem. I don't think the problem was his face. I don't think seeing his eyes was the problem with that show.
No. Look, I think it could have been done with that. I saw that news too, and I said, "Oh, that's the wrong call." I really, honestly did. Like, there's a reason why you never see his face in Halo.
But that's a video game thing, don't you think?
And they've also shown his face in the movies, the animes, the comics. I mean, it's one of those like age-old Halo things that is kind of not really a thing.
Well, they've never seen it in a game.
Unless I'm forgetting it, they've never done it in the video games, right?
Right.
Like,
they did it.
They showed half his face.
They showed his face in 4.
They show his face in 4 when he's a kid. Yeah.
I
honestly
remember when he's getting augmented, and they show his face at the very beginning cutscene in Halo 4. They show his face like full on, but he's a kid. The rule is you can only see his face if you're a kid, or if he's a kid, or if it's not in the video games. That has always been the Halo rule. And this is a movie, or this is a TV show, so you can see his face. It follows the rule.
Yeah. But now it's funny, you know, we're talking about BioShock and doing justice to the IP. I would be lying if I wasn't a little concerned about Halo. What they've shown so far looks great in terms of referencing core kind of Halo story elements and stuff, but I am concerned, of course.
But that's the same concern with like BioShock, though. To me, and this is just trailers. Halo looks cheap, and if it looks cheap,
it looks like a sci-fi.
If BioShock looks cheap, then it's gonna fail because what you've primarily got going for you is your environment. And to me, like, I don't know, Halo looks like Defiance. You remember that video game show?
Yeah, dude. You know what it reminds me of, Hogue? It reminds me of the Sci-Fi Channel TV shows with like the CGI that's not really like fully developed at a movie quality. That's what it reminded me of.
And it's a trailer. You know, they got more time. I mean, who knows? But my initial reaction was, oh, I wish that looked a little bit better.
Yep, I'm the same way. Yeah. Unfortunately.
Oh, it's not okay. Hold on. It's not as bad as the CW. That's
CW. Yeah, somebody said CW. I think that's a little harsh.
Jupiter 119. Let's pump the brakes.
No, I don't think it's. I wouldn't put it at CW level. I would put it at like broadcast network level.
I could Nightfall was CW level. That was CW. The CGI in that was CW. I was like, oh, that was really brutal.
Oh man. All right. Next major topic I wanted to talk to you guys about. I know, Hogue, you talked about this a little bit, but I wanted to have the broader conversation on it with Nintendo announcing this week that they're going to shut down the 3DS and Wii U eShop in March of next year in 2023. So this should not really be hugely surprising to anyone. It's, you know, this whole conversation around how long do you continue to maintain infrastructure, which obviously has a cost to Nintendo, and just being a company, over time, they're not going to maintain that forever, right? But in the video game space, it's interesting because, you know, I always think about it like in the tech world when you're taking down old servers or repurposing hardware, which is what they're doing. But in the video game space, what that really means, right, is that the accessibility to specific games and content is removed. And I think that kind of ties into the larger conversation of game preservation, especially in the digital age, right? We're long past the age where a couple million people had a cartridge that would work forever, theoretically, right? Now it's when you have a digital game and you go to download it, you have to connect to a server and download that game. And if you can't do that, you have no ability to get that game. And that's where we have conversations around like delisting and those things. So one, I was going to just ask if there's any, you guys have any opinion on the 3DS and Wii U stores being shut down. But two, really the larger conversation is, and not that we're going to solve this problem today, but, the conversation around in the digital age now, with most gamers being digital, how do we continue to allow gamers to be able to buy and access games from several generations when there's a cost to the company and it's cost prohibitive? Is there, what's the solution there?
Yeah, so I'm a digital first gamer, and I think that physical games are backwards and not.
All right.
I'm just, because I feel like this opinion is not really like shared as much. Like people who are physical gamers like talk about it a lot, and digital gamers generally don't talk about it because we're in the majority and everything's going our way.
Physical is becoming vegetarian.
Yeah, exactly. It's exactly you're digital is considered the norm. Physical is vegetarian. That's a very good way to put it. So, and I think it should be the norm because I think that it is better for consumers generally speaking. But there is that problem of preservation, and that problem has existed in the physical world as well. I mean, you have the same issue with consoles and games no longer being manufactured.
Arcade games.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, arcade games, you can't buy new ones. It has the same problem. But I think really the onus is on the game creator and the curator. And in this case, they are getting rid of the old way to access games without providing new ways to do it. And that's really the crux of the issue, is that, like, when Xbox got rid of some of their old digital stores, they also had backwards compatibility, saying, but here's the way you can play most of your old games. We did lose some games in the fold there, though, like the Xbox Kinect games. You can't play those on the Series X, and they just stopped manufacturing Xbox One. So, I'm in a situation where if I wanted to play some of the, there are a few gems in the Kinect library. You can't play those anymore. So I think preservation really goes beyond digital. In the way I think about it is that it's not just a digital problem. We have to come up with some sort of way to keep these games alive and accessible. And I think, platform holders owe part of that responsibility, probably game creators as well. But I don't really know what the future looks like where games are safe. And also the other thing is versions of games. You were just talking about, Ains, how you like physical games because maybe it was Hogue talking about how you buy Horizon Forbidden West and then you own it. And that isn't really true. Like, they can update the game and then you don't have the version that you had before. And there's downloads and that sort of stuff. So games are kind of always changing. And then there's a question of, could you ever go back and play Cyberpunk 2077, the year ago version, right? If you just wanted to play that for comparison. And so it's sort of, it goes beyond just, I need a physical box of a game, or I need to be able to own a game digitally and have it on a platform that I want, or even the version that you have. If you wanted to, for whatever reason, play a game before they patched it and updated it, like, can you play Fortnite the first season it came out?
Well, think of Destiny, right?
Destiny's another great example.
Destiny had a wild change in its ammo and how its weapons worked.
Yeah,
I don't even know, 2 years in, it was a period after that they.
You're talking about, they actually just recently did another wild change.
Why not?
I know which one you're talking about. That was a year after it came out.
But they changed the amp, and so that was like, well, I agreed with the change, but if I didn't, it's gone.
Yep.
You can't play it anymore. And no, I was speaking specifically to board games and how much I was enjoying. Like, this card is never going to change. Talking about patches and versions and nerfing and buffing and all this stuff, regardless, because something will change in Horizon Forbidden West. The Javelin's too strong, and I'm enjoying it too much, and that can't happen. Rick needs to enjoy it less, and so they'll come in and they'll make the Javelin weaker for whatever reason. Who knows? And so I agree with you. I did a video on this. You could check it out in Virtual Legality, a little bit more on the law side of things about how a copyright holder has the right to do what Nintendo is doing. But I agree with you entirely that I think we should work on normalizing the fact that it should be looked down upon for you to just take your ball and go home and at least have something that you're considering, even if it isn't terribly useful to players at the time. You know, one of the things we do in kind of commercial software licenses is you say, okay, we're going to escrow this somewhere. If one of us goes under, if it's not, if something's going to happen to it, it's going to pop out and be public because we went under or something bad happened. So maybe if you had essentially these companies commit to some kind of, I would like to see third-party certified escrow library arrangement that says this pops out, or at bare minimum, it's there and it will pop out sometime. So you're not worried about, you know, what do we see with Square Enix? Where we had so much trouble with remasters because it's like, some guy had it in his garage and it burned down and we don't have any of the pre-rendered scenes anymore.
It's crazy.
And it's like,
yeah.
So going through those steps.
Yeah, so that's kind of a point, a direction I was thinking, Hogue, is you kind of mentioned, if I'm reading you correctly or understanding you properly, is kind of have this third party, everyone agrees to location where code or what have you would be stored for yeah, basically, right?
The gaming vault.
Sure. But again, right, the problem you have here is that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of games with billions and billions of lines of code and everything that goes around assets, right? You have assets that take up. No. And that's the point, I think. And that's why these companies do this, is that requires infrastructure, and that infrastructure needs to be maintained at a cost. And that cost can actually go up year over year, right? Because
if you have to access it. I mean, like, so what you see with Nintendo happening mostly is that they've got what I would argue is access points to the public, financial information changing hands, the legal ramifications of acting as either a financial transaction authority or, depending on if you have a wallet in those certain circumstances, actually acting in certain bank regulations, getting out of that business. They're still allowing re-downloads and things. So they're actually maintaining that access to the software itself. And what I'm talking about with an escrow, you could zip it to within an inch of its life. It doesn't have to be out at all. It's just an archive that can be rebuilt if it needs to. It's, you know, it's a mountain vault and it's escrowed and you know it can pop out. I mean, I would also see things change legally. The copyright term is too long, and I would see these things kind of shorten, especially with respect to entertainment media versus things that are of critical infrastructure importance,
Disney,
that kind of thing. And that's the mouse that did this.
The Mickey Mouse, man, he killed it.
It was much shorter copyright time period, and every single time that Disney was going to get in trouble, they went and lobbied and had it extended. So, I mean, that's part of this story. The other part, however, and this is where I get in the negative comments and everything else, is that there's a reason that copyright is called copyright. They are the creators of this stuff. They have the right to do what they want with it, and we don't have to understand it. So when the commenters come in and say, well, if they don't make it available, that gives me a right to pirate or whatever. It's like, well, here's the thing. We know that Nintendo occasionally re-releases stuff, and you don't have to love it, but they are given that legal right because we want to have people create things. We want people to be able to control the things they create. And if you think about it the other way, if it's not Microsoft or PlayStation or Nintendo or whatever evil corporation you want to frame in those terms, and you think about it as your favorite YouTuber, maybe a seasoned gaming podcast, we need to have the right to control this stuff because that's important to the actual act of creation. And if for whatever reason it made sense for us to vault this podcast and put it back out for you later because that made some amount of sense, the folks that actually create it have to have the right to do that.
Great.
And we see that Nintendo can control that market. We see them re-release stuff. We see that sometimes these companies are embarrassed about what's out there. They don't like it. We see Disney, as much as we might not like it as preservationists, going and hiding movies that they made in the early 40s and 50s and 60s and saying, nope, that's not us. We didn't. What are you talking about? We didn't do that. And historians get mad about that. I personally get mad about that. But there's value in that to the actual creator of the materials. So it's difficult for me other than normalizing. You hear me say normalizing. I don't want there to be a law. I want creators to be able to control what they make because there are so many more than are just Nintendo or Xbox or PlayStation out there. But I think that we should normalize. You guys should have a plan. You guys shouldn't have a FAQ that essentially treats us as morons when you say, oh, you're good. Buy our expansion pass. We got your back. All right. Okay. Hold on. Tell us how this is going to survive into the future. Tell us how when that copyright expires, that's going to be made available to people.
So
tell us that story.
perfect
I
segue,
also
'cause
feel
that-
like,
this is a
yeah,
great
go ahead.
example. The DE said is imagine a media molecule, PlayStation obviously, shut down Dreams. So Dreams is this game creation suite, right? It's been out for several years now, and it's gotten. There's some people who are very dedicated and have created some truly, truly impressive games with that suite. What happens if next year Sony says, "Yeah, we're shutting down Dreams and goodbye"?
Yeah, I think
And
it
then-
will happen.
They're on the
it
Big Planet, didn't
happened, what happened with
Yes.
Xbox's Spark, remember? It was
Yes,
the same thing.
exactly
All
right.
those
Project
things got
Spark.
taken away.
I hadn't remembered Spark until.
Yeah, I
Griffin
know.
was
Nobody
saying
did,
it.
but just like Dreams, there was also another community, a sub community that was super into that game and building things just like Roblox, and that game doesn't exist anymore.
I
Another
got to
example.
tell you, I can't recommend practically or legally building your livelihood or your dreams in another's proprietary software.
Insane.
That's
Roblox is a nightmare. I looked into that recently and was like, wow, this is a den of vipers in this.
I can't
This,
recommend it. No, because
yeah.
you put it in your. I mean, hell, I feel bad enough operating on YouTube where you're constantly like, well, they could just bust down on the channel if I say X, Y, or Z, and so it's very difficult.
I had a good conversation with Jez over at Windows Central about that when we talked about you basically, the point he made, if you take it to its most extreme, is if you are a content creator that's your livelihood, right, on YouTube or videos or what have you, your channel, that Google literally can, just they could snap their fingers and crush you, because between Google search engine and YouTube, of course, they own both, you can be done. You could disappear in a blink of an eye. And it's wild to really kind of
remember
put
that,
it
Ains.
It's wild to put it.
Build out your portfolio, just like if you were holding stock, you have to try to figure out how to protect against that. I mean, I don't know when this will happen, but I'm currently working on Virtual Legality as a separate website with its own servers and things like that you can control. But that's that'll be an expense, but it's bigger than I thought it would be. And I think people should always be evaluating what happens if they shut it down. What happens if they shut me down? And how will I feel about that? Because as I say on my channel, virtually every terms of service says some variant of, if we feel cold this morning, we can take your stuff down.
Once YouTube rebrands talking crap on the Stadia as hate speech, your channel's going down, Hogue. Your channel's going down. This channel's going down. We're all.
But I'll level with you. For those of you that don't do YouTube, that don't do this as kind of content creation, if I put the word YouTube in the title to my video, it gets depressed. Like you can actually see it depress the viewership that it goes out to. It does not like me talking about it. So every time you see that, understand that, I'm just like, screw it. We got to talk about you.
It's their platform, Hogue. They have the right to. Yeah,
they do. Whatever. I'm not begrudging them the right. I'm just pointing out that it's
it is bad. Yeah, I think like to your point, Hogue, like creators have the right to do whatever they want, but I also think the consumers of content have a certain. Maybe they don't have a right actually, but they kind of should have a right to access the things that they bought in the state that they bought them. And this isn't just a video game problem. I mean, they took down episodes of different TV shows because they contain blackface, which if you are a fan of comedy that sometimes has topics that make people feel uncomfortable, you lost content there. Like you can't access it unless you go and you buy a Blu-ray and get a physical copy of it. But it still kind of speaks to preservation and historical revisionism in the case of the TV shows that they changed, and all these topics that I think are things that we don't really have rules for yet, and we ought to. Like we really ought to. Yeah.
Well, yeah. The most important thing to understand is when you buy something digitally, you're not buying the underlying asset. You're buying a license to it.
You're also, I mean, that's true of physical stuff too. You're also just buying the asset. It's just on a disc. It's still just a license though, guys.
It is, but if it's not connected to the internet and they can't get to it, it doesn't matter quite as much.
Well, video games, they always connect to the internet.
Putting your CD in your Discman from good old 1994, you got your Mariah Carey right there, untouched from the time that you were listening to it all through 8th grade.
Yeah, but my point is, when it comes to video games, you do not get that when you buy a video game physically. It's a license, and you have to connect it to the internet.
That's what I get,
because that's how you download the game. Yeah,
absolutely, and they're mostly downloading whatever data is even on that disc into their hard drive. That's why I get so amused. I got a number of comments that are like, "Well, you can't buy Horizon digitally. You can buy it on disc. I have too little space on my hard drive." I was like,
"Nope, bro, you have to install it, bro."
Do you understand how this is going to work?
Yeah.
I don't know. I just think it's an interesting conversation, and it's an interesting problem, right? That kind of will be solved for in some way, I suppose, over time. But
yeah, we can only hope. I mean, I think the Copyright Act deserves reform. I think normalizing certain aspects of the actual relationship deserves it. And I will say this. I mean, you hear me say negative things and you get concerned about what I say about Nintendo's rights and things like this. People have power. People have power. You can see it all over the place. You can see these companies changing tacks quickly with things that are important to people. I think the problem with the preservationists right now is that, in all honesty, the market as a whole doesn't care about it as much as they do. So the first step is convincing the market, and that can happen. But right now, people get upset, and I want to tell them it's because they're not getting that much pressure on any of this stuff. So until that happens, it's not going to change.
I just feel like, to your point, like the whole Mickey Mouse thing, the copyright extension that just keeps going on because Disney doesn't want Mickey Mouse to be under public domain. I think that at some point that model has got to give, and I think this generation is going to see that happen because, to me, the thing. To your point, Hogue, like creators should have the right, but should BioWare have the right for Mass Effect to always be under their copyright, even after all the people who originally created that property are dead, right? Like when they're all gone, like should they still have the right as an organization? And that's where I think there's probably some opportunity to get into the, well, you know, once the people aren't alive anymore, it kind of probably should be,
the law says they never owned it, Travis. I'm sorry to say.
I know, because they work for an organization.
That was always the entity's copyright. But yeah, I think the right way is to shorten that year.
Shorten it, make it
not 95 years. 95 is too long.
It is way too long. It's way too long. And then because then it becomes something where the fans can take over the role of preserving it if they have access to that sort of thing.
No, I think 95 is too long. And I think that's absolutely a completely fair response. And especially in digital, right? I've said this for a long time. The Copyright Act treats every piece of created content the same, whether it's a painting or a video game or what have you. Let's get in there and categorize, because tech gets stale much faster.
Yeah.
So let's talk about a shorter time frame. 15.
That's true.
Two generations of console.
There's also a weird thing going on in games where IPs will sometimes get lost forever. Like the company that owned Condemned went out of business, and then Condemned got bought by some
dude. This is my no one lives forever fight. One day.
One day. But the Condemned, the guy who owns Condemned is just some dude on Twitter, and he's like, hey, because of some stuff, I own Condemned. What do you guys think I should do with it? He was like tweeting about it. And it's just like, what the hell's happening? Like, and how does that guy have a right to it? Just by the arbitrary, like,
we're not sure. And the thing about a video game is it's a combined audio visual work, right? You see this with music licenses. You see this with various aspects of what's been built into that. We just saw, I just did a video on Marty O'Donnell is suing Microsoft for not paying royalties out on Halo because he licensed it in instead of making it for Bungie directly. And that, that's a whole big thing. And, I mean, I think what I would like to see, so there's a concept, I think I might have mentioned this in the space, but I do a lot of talking, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself, is a clearinghouse of some kind. So in real property, right, we don't like to have pieces of land, not know who's owning it. In real property, you have a clearinghouse. You say, okay, we can't figure out what the proper chain of title is here. And so we're going to put it up. We're going to tell people that we're going to figure out who owns this, and lay your claims now, Crusader Kings style. And if it doesn't come in, we're going to auction it off. To me, it's like, if no one can figure out who owns No One Lives Forever, and because that means that no one will remaster No One Lives Forever, because as soon as it's a success, which it will be, because the game is fantastic, then everybody comes out of the woodwork who has an interest in it at all. Then it never gets made in the first place. Kill out that chilling effect. Let's put your money where your mouth is, publishing assholes, and let's clear this out.
Well,
we don't have a mechanism
IP
for that
lives
right now,
forever either,
because the law is not built for a digital economy. It's not, and the law is always at least 100 years too late for anything. So it might be updated in the next 50 or so.
Solid, right
IP
there.
lives forever, I think, is the takeaway from that.
No One Lives Forever. If you can figure out how to get it operating on your computer, go nuts. Excellent game.
I never played it, but I remember it.
Oh, great game.
All right, fellas. Well, I think that is going to wrap us up for today. Just a couple things to shout out. We've got new industry perspectives on the channel with the founder of Xbox Era, John Clark, a conversation between me and him that I really enjoyed. Check that out. We have a new video up for supporter and producer patrons. I sat down with Khalif Adams, the host of Spawn on Me. for a fantastic conversation about several things, including he put a final nail in the coffin of New York pizza being better than Chicago pizza. Dan, I just want to let you know we settled that. And of course, this week coming up, after you get over the terrible takes on Horizon, I think that we had today, which will revisit us or haunt us this week, I'm sure.
It's measured,
You'll
thought
find
out
them
takes.
insightful
Measured.
and detailed.
Coming this week,
Nuanced.
of course, have the release of Elden Ring, one of the most
That
anticipated
comes
games
out this week, right?
and we will have a lot of coverage on it and an awful lot to say on it next week. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, guys, always a pleasure. Please, like I said, give us a like, give us a sub, give us a review if you're enjoying the content, and let us know. We love comments as well, and we respond to all of them. So, Travis, where can people find you, man?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at TyGuyTravis. And this past couple weeks, I've created a ton of content for IGN. My most recent reviews are up for Crossfire X. I reviewed the multiplayer and the single player separately. I gave the single player a 3 out of 10, which is awful. And I gave the multiplayer a 2 out of 10, which is painful. So all in all, great week for me reviewing games.
50% better for the single player, though. That's an endorsement.
50% better for the single player. The single player is like noticeably better. Like I did the single player review first, and I told Dan like 3, and then he was like, "All right, well, good luck with multiplayer." I was like, "Yeah, it's significantly worse," and he was like,
Oh God,
"Oh boy, yeah, it is significantly worse." So, yeah, if you were thinking about playing Crossfire X, I do not recommend it. Even at free, the price you pay is too high for playing that game. So yeah, move on to something else. Don't play those.
your
They're real
time
bad.
matters.
Your
You
time
matter.
matters. Your time is your greatest currency, and you should not waste it on Crossfire. That's all I got to say.
Excellent. Hogue.
Yes, you can find all my hot takes on Horizon and various other games that you enjoyed and I did not at the Hoglaw YouTube channel, youtube.com/Hoglaw, HOEGLAW. You can also find such takes if you'd like to direct them towards me on Twitter. I'm getting a lot of direct messages for pointing out that Sony priced Horizon differently depending on where you were looking at it. So please do add your comments to my social media streams at your discretion. Otherwise, I had a great time on the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Funny, one bad OBM's in the chat. He said, if you add single player and multiplayer of Crossfire together, you still have a bad score.
Yep. Yeah, it's true. Actually, it's funny. I'm
That is.
reviewing Destiny, the Witch Queen next, and somebody was commenting, if you combine all 3 of the past reviews Travis has done, it equals like a good score. Like there's a pretty good chance that if I review Destiny and it's a really good game, that it'll be a greater number than my past 3 reviews combined.
Yeah,
So,
what
I was going to ask who you offended at IGN.
I honestly, so this was accidental. Like, it's not like they know that the games are going to be bad necessarily, but Crossfire X, they told us we were going to get codes, and then we didn't. And that week when they were saying, "Oh, we're going to get codes," and then they gave it to us on the day the game came out, that's when we all knew the game was going to be bad, because that's like a classic publisher move, is like, don't give out review copies until the game's already out, but keep saying you're going to, just to.
They're in the mail. They are in the digital mail.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude. As soon as that happened, I was like, this game's going to be real bad. Yep.
Yeah.
And it was.
So we've got, we'll be talking Witch Queen next week too. Big show next week. Witch Queen Elden Ring.
Yes. I am playing it from Tuesday, March 5th. I'm playing that game for like 12 days straight for the review. So it's going to be lots of that. And then I might not even get to Elden Ring. So unfortunately, I might have to sit out.
Destiny's release date? So Elden Ring is it Friday next week, and then Destiny
25th, and Destiny is the 22nd, Tuesday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, and Elden Ring is Friday. Yep.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try to get some time in with Elden Ring just so I can talk about it on this show. But realistically, I might not have time just because I'm reviewing that game. I got to play it.
I got you covered. All right, Dan. Anything to shout out before we head out?
Yeah, follow these guys, all 3 of them, before you even think about following me. Not even going to give you my Twitter handle. Yep. Because, yeah. Oh, damn it.
All right, guys. Thank you as always. You've been awesome today. Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you who listen to us later on as well. As always, the Bitcast, your weekly show covering all things Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, and PC with weekly and technical insight. And now legal. I need to add legal to that word, Hogue. Legal insight.
Business and law, virtually
Not
reality.
legal advice, right? Just not legal advice.
Oh God, yes. None of this is legal advice.
Everything I say is legal advice. Everything.
You can bring the bar complaints to Travis.
There you go. All right, guys. Have a good week. We will talk big show next week. We'll see you then. Peace.